Hi, I'm Joseph Crosby, and this is Out of Bounds, Daily Bruin Sports Podcast. A 42-7 win for UCLA football up in Stanford this week. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Out of Bounds, Daily Bruin Sports Podcast. I am your fill-in host this week, Joseph Crosby, the sports editor at the Daily Bruin and a fourth-year statistics major. Unfortunately, Gavin could not be here, but I am still joined by the lovely, the wonderful Jack Nelson. Jack, how you doing?
Doing terrific, Joseph. I cannot believe I'm sitting here with the one and only Crosmater hosting Out of Bounds. Gavin's not here. It's a weird scenario. I'm excited. Just got here from Stanford. Literally went straight from Stanford to the studio, and I'm excited to talk some UCLA football. We got a lot to talk about this week.
What a time to be alive, Jack. A wonderful story of the game the other day. Just a lot of great work on the road. Yes, I am filling in for Gavin. A bit of a crazy scenario. But we're making it work. We're doing what we got to do to get this podcast and this video form podcast out to you guys, the audience. So with that, I think we'll just jump right into it. UCLA football goes to Stanford. They win 42-7. They kind of were in control the entire game. They scored 3 touchdowns in the first half. They scored 35 points before Stanford even gets on the board once. Jack, what are your takeaways from the game?
Yeah, well, you got to start with the big storyline right off the bat here, and that's hours before kickoff. Ethan Garbers announced as the starter for UCLA. Of course, we know Dante Moore had started pretty much all of Pac-12 play for UCLA up until this point. Bit of a shocker. Actually, I'd say a lot of big of a shocker. Not just a bit of a shocker, big shock.
Yeah.
And this game just ended up being really a story of 2 players, not only Ethan Garbers, but also Carson Steele, both really carrying the offensive load for UCLA and really just spearheading the scoring attack for the Bruins. Of course, we saw Garbers really have probably his best game as a Bruin. Then again, his sample size, not huge, of course. We haven't really seen that much from him, but he had 2 touchdowns through the air. He started out a perfect 8 for 8 through the air as well, was really hitting his guys and looked very comfortable out there. Of course, Stanford's defense, we know how poor their passing defense has been this season, so not a big shock to see Garbers play so well against that defense. And then Carson Steele got things going right out of the gate, back-to-back rushing touchdowns, eventually his third right after that, putting UCLA out to a 21-point lead.
21 for 21. The birthday boy himself gets 3 touchdowns.
Yes, he said it in the post-game press conference. It's funny how the little things work out like that.
How can you not be romantic about football?
Exactly. And so, we saw UCLA pretty much just dominate the first half, kept rolling in the second. It just story kept being with Garbers and Steele. Of course, we've known how good this UCLA defense has been this season. They're now the #1 rushing defense in the country. If you can believe that, it only allowed, I believe, 24 rushing yards against Stanford, something like that. So certainly another impressive performance.
Especially after that Oregon State game where they gave up the most rushing yards they had all season, to come back and really show UCLA can stop the run. That's not something that's really a question.
Yeah, exactly. And just with this defense, as you mentioned, with Oregon State, this is a big redemption game for them, just proving to us once again why this is one of the best defenses in the Pac-12. And it'll pay big dividends for UCLA down the road as the schedule gets tougher from here on out. And just overall, expectedly a large victory against Stanford. I know Chip was a little emotional in the post-game presser about it being potentially the last game against Stanford in a long time. It used to be a big rivalry, not so much in recent years, but it was pretty much the game just played out exactly how we were expecting it, minus the last-minute change for Ethan Garbers.
Yeah, I think that, Garbers gets in the game, they run the ball a lot, then Garbers gets his 2 touchdowns, and then by that point, it's 35 points. You're up by 35. TJ Harden gets the touchdown to respond to the 1 Stanford score. And then all of a sudden there's 10 minutes left in the game. And, Dante Moore gets in, then Chase Griffin gets in, and then Justin Martin gets in the game. And it felt like a repeat of the North Carolina Central minus Colin Schley, who's still out with an injury. And then defensively, the bouncing back from Oregon State, everything that can be said there. Humphrey had that interception late in the fourth quarter, a bit of a garbage time play, but still something to take note of. And just an all-around good performance and a way to get, your first Pac-12 road win. They hadn't won on the road in conference play yet. And, bouncing back from that Oregon State win.
Yeah, definitely. And then one thing that just stood out to me about Ethan, and something we haven't seen that much from him at this point, is what he did with his legs in this game. I mean, you saw him extending the drive quite a few times, especially with third down conversions, just scrambling out and ultimately being a factor in the rushing game for UCLA, which I don't think many of us saw coming. I certainly didn't anticipate it. And we just haven't seen that much from Ethan in general. So I guess finally seeing him play a full game confidently for UCLA and have a strong performance definitely tells us a lot more about the quarterback room and the scenario there that we probably didn't anticipate getting to know much more about this season. So
yeah, I think one thing that stuck out to me about Ethan Garbers was just watching him in the pocket. He seemed to have a generally good awareness of what was happening around him, which I think is something that Dante Moore has kind of lacked this year. But Dante Moore also has 6 games of experience.
Yeah, it's the veteran freshman difference, right?
It really is, and he has a sense of when he's going to get flushed out, which isn't all that often because Stanford's pass rush again wasn't very good. It is hard to put so much stock into what happened because of Stanford's poor defense, but I think there are some takeaways that can be made. But I think we've pretty much covered all that.
Yeah, let's move on to the big game coming up for UCLA this week.
The big game,
Colorado.
Homecoming game, Colorado, prime time. Deion Sanders is coming to Westwood. I think one of the more anticipated games of the year for UCLA and for UCLA fans. I know there's been a lot of buzz on campus. I think that's something you've noticed too.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Well, we heard earlier last week that it's a sold-out game, which for UCLA, sold out it has an asterisk to it. We know there's those giant tarps, the Rose Bowl. They're not going to be filling the 90-something thousand Rose Bowl seats with fans. Probably around, 60, 70,000, something like that. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, obviously this is just it has all the headlines of a Hollywood kind of matchup. You think about UCLA, obviously, just at this point of the season, they need to keep reeling together those wins. And with prime time coming to the Rose Bowl for the first time, bringing this Colorado offense. I'll have you, Joe, get us started here with your thoughts on the Colorado offense coming in.
It's a really interesting unit because they're really good at passing the ball. Shedeur Sanders is, I think we said this before the Washington State game, that Cam Ward was the best quarterback UCLA will have played. Shedeur Sanders is better than Cam Ward, especially with how Washington State has performed lately. So this passing attack is going to be a real threat, but Colorado cannot run the ball. They have the 126th best rushing offense in the country. Their offensive line is not good. They've allowed 35 sacks. That's second to last in the country. Shedeur Sanders, for all that he is in the talent in the passing game, I mean, he's got over 2,000 yards already, 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, but he holds onto the ball for so long, and I think that's going to make him really susceptible to this UCLA pass rush that's been so effective this year. So it's really a tale of two, a really good passing offense and a really bad rushing offense.
Yeah, definitely. And then just some of my thoughts on the defense for Colorado. Somehow a worse defense than Stanford. We talked about all week how bad Stanford has been on defense, especially in the passing game. Colorado brings in the worst total defense in the country.
Yeah. And
a passing defense that is also just as bad as Stanford's. I mean, Colorado ranks what? They have, like I said, worst total defense also. I mean, they're allowing 473.3 yards per game. They have the worst pass defense in the country, which is, Stanford was second worst going into the game this past week. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at another defense that UCLA's offense can certainly take advantage of. We'll see whether that's Ethan or Dante. That'll be a big discussion. I think we're going to have a little debate about that later on in the pod today because I had a lot of thoughts on that I want to run by you. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how UCLA's offense goes against another poor defense like this and if the Bruins can rack up some points or if this is going to be a closer game than we think. So with that, I'll ask you, Jose, what is your prediction?
What is my prediction? Well, hold on. I'm going to bury the lead a little bit here.
Okay, all right.
I'll just say it is very much like the Stanford game in the sense that the defense of Colorado is not very good, but that passing offense cannot be understated because it is so much better than what Ashton Daniels and Troy Taylor were running out last week. It's going to be such a different look with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and some of those guys that they have out there because they really distribute the ball really well. I don't think any receiver has more than 4 touchdowns, but Shedeur has 21 passing touchdowns on the year. They're very good at getting the ball to a lot of different places. I'm gonna make the hot take. I think Colorado's winning. That's
did not see that coming.
I just watching. I don't know. Maybe it's the gut feeling of this is the game UCLA loses that they probably should win, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say Colorado's gonna win. I think they're gonna do it in the air. I think they're just going to pass the ball a bunch, and I think they're going to come out with a victory. But I think it's going to be close. I think it'll be very close. I think 27-24, something like that. I don't know if it's going to be a high-scoring affair, but I don't know. Colorado's going to find some magic or something and make something happen.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, we saw UCLA's secondary struggled a little bit against Oregon State, and I guess a little bit against Washington State as well. And of course, in the past, it's been well documented how the secondary has struggled against really good passing offense. So I can certainly see this being a close contest. I have a similar thing. I do not have the upset picked. I do have UCLA winning this 34-28, and I'll tell you why right now. Yes, Colorado thrives in the passing game. Just talked about how the secondary has been inconsistent for the Bruins over the years. Again, inconsistent this season, although certainly more improved than previous years thanks to the work of Danton Lynn with the unit there. But this is just another game against such a bad defense. It cannot be understated how poor this Colorado defense is. It is such a factor in this game. You cannot overlook it. I really don't think it matters who UCLA puts out, Ethan or Dante. I think they really can rack up a lot of points against this Colorado defense. But I do think it's going to be closer because of the potency of that passing offense for Colorado and Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter and all they've got going on over there in Boulder. Yeah, that's my thoughts.
I think I got really pessimistic after the Oregon State game, and I'm not sure I saw anything in Stanford that makes me think, oh, this is a much better football team than the one that went to Corvallis, because I feel like that game was just a game that you should win, and you win 10 out of 10 times. But we'll see. Maybe I'll look like an idiot. I don't know. That's not for me to decide.
I will say I got to give myself a little bit of credit here on the pod just because I had the prediction 42-10 UCLA over Stanford formally. So I was very close. I may or may not have been rooting for Stanford to get a field goal at the end of the game just for the satisfaction of getting it exactly right. But I'll sell 42-10 or 42-7. It's pretty good for me. So I'm riding the high of that prediction going into this one, and hopefully I'm right again, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think with that, we can move on to our next segment, our first official segment of the day. We'll bring back the chipometer. I think this is going to be the part. We'll touch a little bit on the quarterback decision. Jack, what are your assessments of Chip Kelly and the coaching staff's performance after that Stanford game?
Yeah, I'll get right into it, talking about and addressing what exactly happened with the quarterback situation from what I heard from Chip being in the room in the post-game presser. What he told us happened with Dante and Ethan is that earlier in the week, Dante was a little banged up from the previous game, didn't get as many repetitions as Ethan in practice this week. Ultimately, because of that, Ethan got more looks, was more prepared for the game. Hence, Chip opted to go with Ethan against Stanford this weekend. Whether that's entirely true, I don't know. He could be misleading. Chip has been very vague with the press in the past. He doesn't exactly tell us the whole story, which most coaches don't. Obviously, they have the right to tell the story however they want. But I sense not exactly true. We'll see what happens. I think it was probably more a case of Dante's struggles in the past few weeks. I think a lot of people probably had the same thoughts after that decision came out hours before kickoff. But with the chipometer, in that sense, after that decision, I really don't have him moving anywhere. This is a win that UCLA definitely should have got. Regardless if it was Dante or Ethan, I think they would have dominated Stanford either way. I really don't think it matters who you put in at quarterback in this game. The Stanford defense is so poor, and both these quarterbacks have the ability to dominate against that kind of a unit. I think they would have succeeded pretty much the same way, and whoever they put out there. And so really the reason I'm not moving Chip anywhere on the chipometer this week is just because, to me, this was such a strange decision and one that I don't really think is entirely justifiable. I think you should have kept Dante in this game precisely because he needs the experience. He needs to show that he can actually improve throughout the season. We've seen him just sort of steadily decline throughout the beginning of Pac-12 play. And so I think this would have been a great game for him to finally get some much needed experience and show what he can really do against a lower tier sort of defense, and just build some confidence, because he desperately needs some confidence at this point in the season.
Yeah, I think this whole season in the spring or in the summer it was, and in fall it was who's going to be the starting quarterback. Go week to week. They're not saying anybody official. Ethan Garbers starts week 1. Has not a very great game. Dante Moore has a good game. Then Dante Moore becomes your starter moving forward. And then it just kind of came, okay, we're not going to ask about it because it's just kind of implied that Chip will either dodge the question a little bit, or Dante Moore is already just understood to be the starting quarterback. And I think that's why it was so shocking, because no one really had any reason to ask the question in that week leading up. I don't see any reason to move Chip up or down in terms of anything. They won the game they should win. They win that game with Dante Moore at quarterback. They win that game with Ethan Garbers at quarterback. I don't think it's really a question either way. But I think the thing that will be interesting is this week is if Ethan Garbers is starting, and I think we're going to get to that in a minute. or if Dante Moore is starting, and how both of them react to playing at home again, playing against Colorado, who has a bad defense. I'm already regretting my pick, but yeah, I think that it's just another stagnant week for Chip Kelly, as they won the game they should win.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more on that. With that being said, shall we move into what was personally my favorite segment, and after last week, I am all in on this segment because I have to win. I have to win this segment. I cannot settle for another loss. Gavin embarrassed me last week on the pod. And so shall we move into DB debates?
Streets are saying that it's DB debates time.
Oh, I love the streets.
I'm saying it. It's DB debates time. I know it's your guys' favorite segment. I think it's my favorite as well. I really like doing it. So before we get to the quarterback discussion, we're going to start with, where does UCLA fit in with the rest of the Pac-12? I think there was some interesting games this week, especially USC-Utah. Crazy ending, Utah winning on that game-winning field goal in Los Angeles. Focusing mostly on that kind of cohort of Utah, USC, Arizona, Colorado, UCLA, Oregon State, because I think we can both agree that Washington and Oregon are the top two teams in the conference, and Cal, Stanford, Arizona State, and the fourth team that I can't think of right now, that is also at the bottom of the Pac-12.
Yes, I'm actually forgetting the team as well. Washington State. Washington State,
right. Two of those teams UCLA has already beaten. They're not very good. So I think focusing on those six, where do you kind of see UCLA slotting in?
Yeah, I'll give you my ranking here. So I've got Utah at number 1, Oregon State 2, Arizona at 3, USC 4, UCLA 5, and Colorado 6 out of that middle 6 teams. What do you got, Joseph?
I've definitely got Utah 1. I think they beat USC. They did lose to Oregon State, but I think they've just proven that they are a better team than Oregon State, and they lost that game on the road. So I've got Utah 1. Then I think I'm going to go USC 2.
Okay, all right. Keep going with it.
They did beat Arizona in a game that they had a very close chance of losing if Jed Fish had gone for 2 at one point or another. But I'd say for now, USC's only lost 1 conference game, and they've only lost it to Utah. So that could change. So I'll go Utah, then USC. Then I'll go Oregon State. And then I'll go Arizona. And then I'll go UCLA, Colorado. But I'm still picking Colorado to win. I do think UCLA is a better, more complete team than Colorado is, just overall in terms of the conference. But I think that Colorado is still going to win this week.
Okay, I'm going to go right into it here. I cannot believe you have USC right behind Utah after what we've seen these past few weeks from USC. I'm buying the narrative that USC's like the wheels are falling off. Lincoln Riley, there is trouble at Coliseum. There's problems with that program. We saw they very nearly, actually, they should have lost that game to Arizona a couple weeks back. They're coming off consecutive losses to Notre Dame and, of course, as you mentioned it, Utah last week. And their defense is just falling apart. I mean, it's been poor most of the season. And we expected that from USC, but now we starting to see their offense start to falter a little bit, right? And when you rely on offense so heavily like USC has done for their success, when you have Caleb Williams, who was a Heisman favorite, maybe not so much anymore. He's definitely fallen down the rankings in my mind. I think USC, I can't really justify putting them over Oregon State. And I think Arizona has shown quite enough these past few weeks that I would put them over USC because I believe they should have beaten USC. USC got a little lucky in that game, in my opinion. And of course, we saw Arizona also destroy Washington State, who had a team that UCLA barely escaped, right? 25-17 final score for UCLA. And then Arizona won that 44-6, I believe, against Washington State.
That was crazy.
Yeah, that was surprising.
I definitely have Arizona above UCLA. I think they're a really interesting team. And they probably should have won that game. But I don't know. I find it hard at this point. USC is still 4-1 in conference play to quite yet say they're not that good.
All right, maybe I'm being looking too much in the future here.
Maybe a little.
I just see USC as right now with their program and how much they're falling apart. I've read a lot of stories on this, and it's seen a lot of people who are in the program. And I will also point out USC's their disrespect to the media these past this season has been crazy. I mean, there was a reporter from the SoCal News Group they barred from access for a couple weeks, or tried to bar from access, and then they didn't provide any player media availability after losing to Utah. So I think there's a lot of dysfunction in that program right now, and that's really going to come back to hurt them later this season. That's why I have Oregon State and Arizona above them at this point, just because I think USC is in a heap of trouble right now.
I respect the take. I think, on the UCLA note of it, we both have them at 5, I think?
Yes, I agree. I don't think UCLA
5, Colorado
should.
6.
Yeah.
They're just not on the same level as those teams, as that quartet of Utah, Oregon State, Arizona, USC. They're just not up there right now.
All right.
Right now, at least.
So, then consensus on who wins this debate.
We've actually got Gavin Carlson on the phone, special guest. Couldn't be here on the pod, but he's going to decide who won that debate. Gavin, what's the call?
Our amazing camera lady, Zoë Busenberg, is on the phone with Gavin right now for all listeners and viewers.
I'm hearing that I won the debate.
What?
According to Gavin Carlson, I won.
Wow, that is a surprising
An unexpected win.
I feel it's a little personal, Gavin, but okay. We'll move on to our next debate in the interest of time here.
Last bit of the show. Should UCLA start Ethan Garbers moving forward? Jack, what do you think?
No, they should not. Yes, he has a good game against Stanford. Stanford's defense is terrible. I've talked about it all episode long. It's an easy talking point. I mean, Ethan Garbers, we've seen basically nothing from that guy except from this game against Stanford. It was his first, he played against Utah at some point, either 2 seasons ago. I don't exactly remember quite when. But it's just, look, you have Dante Moore. He's a freshman. He was recruited for a reason. Yes, he's very talented. Yes, he has struggled. We've seen that. But there was simply no reason in my mind to put Ethan in this game against Stanford instead of Dante, unless there's actual legitimate Dante Moore injury that we just don't know about. And might not know about for a while. We'll see how that pans out in the coming weeks. Dante Moore is what this UCLA offense needs right now, which, yes, bold statement considering how they've played with him in the pocket and with him these past few games, but he just needs experience. I really am confident in Dante that he will improve in these coming weeks, especially if he gets the start against Colorado, if he returns to the starting role. There's just nothing really to be excited about with Ethan Garbers. There is something to be excited about with Dante Moore, in my opinion, for Bruin fans. I know they're not that high on him right now, but for the stability of this program moving forward, and at the risk of potentially losing Dante to the transfer portal, which would be a nightmare scenario, I believe that Ethan Garbers should not be starting moving forward.
I think that Ethan Garbers should start until Colin Schlee gets healthy. I think that Dante Moore kind of had the chip stacked against him in going to Utah on the road in his first Pac-12 game. That is a daunting task. Rice-Eccles Stadium is not an easy place to play. Utah has a good defense. And then he comes out and has an all right game against Washington State and then still throws 2 interceptions and then 3 interceptions against Oregon State. It's just not looked great. And I think given a few weeks to develop under a veteran quarterback, could see some great strides being taken from Dante Moore into his sophomore season. But I think for now, for the sake of winning football games, Ethan Garbers should be starting. I think that he provides a slightly higher floor in terms of maybe less concern about turning the ball over repeatedly. I think there's still interceptions concerns there, just from also a lack of experience. But having been in that college football environment for a number of years now, I think Ethan Garbers and then eventually Colin Schlee both provide that kind of stability that is more up and down roller coaster like with Dante Moore right now. But I also think that Colin Schlee can run the ball really well. And if he comes back healthy, whether that be 2-3 weeks from now, he should also have a chance to kind of throw his hat back in the ring, get some more pass attempts, because he can do both sides of the ball. Yeah,
I mean, we got to consider Colin a little bit, yeah. But at the end of the day, this isn't an Ethan Garbers Colin Schlee argument. This is an Ethan Garbers Dante Moore argument from my standpoint. We got to assume that Colin Schlee is not going to be good to go next week or for the next few weeks. Sure. We just don't know what his status is. So we got to assume that it's between Ethan and Dante at this point.
I still say Ethan Garbers.
Okay, I still say Dante Moore, and I will stick with that because I cannot see Ethan Garbers starting for this program going forward. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of dysfunction in the quarterback room, to be honest, if Ethan Garbers continues to start. And we asked Ethan Garbers about it in the postgame presser against Stanford. He didn't really give us much on it. We didn't expect him to really tell us much about. We asked him a little bit about what the scenario was between him and Dante, with if there's any conversations. He didn't really tell us much about it. But I think there's a big risk for team chemistry by moving Ethan into the starting role moving forward, and for losing Dante and losing him as part of this UCLA team. I really think that is a big risk going forward, and you cannot afford that risk, especially if you're looking for a big-time quarterback to move you into the Big Ten when UCLA does move into the Big Ten for next season. Big time. But yeah, I'll leave my argument at that, and so I'll leave that to the consensus of our good man Gavin Carlson, who is now on the phone with Zoe.
I'm not feeling too hot. I think Jack kind of cooked.
Gavin agrees with Jack, but think Joseph argued better.
That's crazy.
Wow.
So
wow.
There you have it. Gavin agrees with Jack's perspective, but says I argued the point better.
Man, even when Gavin's not
0
here,
for 2
he
today,
still embarrasses
Jack.
me.
0 for 2.
Wow.
That's brutal.
That's rough. Well, you know what? We'll have more debates in the future. I'll get more chance to redeem myself.
There will be many debates to come.
There will be many debates to come. We miss Gavin. I appreciate Gavin calling in, giving us his consensus. Gets a little bit of drama to the pod, which I'd love to see. But yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Joe, to cap things off here.
That wraps up our show. A couple of DB debates. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. You can find podcasts from the Daily Bruin like this and more anywhere you access your podcast: Spotify, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud. You can also find this video episode on YouTube, Daily Bruin, UCLA Daily Bruin. Sorry, I had to get the channel right. And a transcript of this episode can be accessed on dailybruin.com along with other great Daily Bruin content. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.